Today, I'm going to deep dive into the 2025 Clemson football season. First, I'm going to break down impact players on both the offensive and defensive side of the football. And then I'm going to do an in-depth prediction on every single football game that Clemson has on the regular season schedule. Before I get into my impact players, I want to define exactly what I mean by impact. I don't mean the best player, because the best player doesn't always have the most impact. I mean key players, players who are going to make or break this season for the Clemson Tigers. Let's get right into it. My three impact players for Clemson this year on offense are Cade Klubnik, TJ Moore, and Gideon Davidson. Cade Klubnik is regarded as a top Heisman contender in the preseason, and if Clemson is going to have the season that I and many other people think they're going to have, he's going to have to continue that trend of increasing production each year. He's gone from 2,844 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, and 19 interceptions with a rating of 126.3 in 2023 to 3,639 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions with a rating of 148.2 this past year in 2024. Clemson's hopes of having a national championship caliber offense depend on Klubnik having a season that puts him in Heisman contention. The second key player on Clemson's offense is TJ Moore. Him and Bryant Wesco Jr. were the two highly touted freshman wide receivers on this team last year, and Bryant Wesco Jr. slightly outperformed him despite TJ Moore being ranked higher out of high school as a 5-star. If TJ Moore makes a jump this year, him, Antonio Williams, and Wesco could rival Ohio State as the top wide receiver room in the country. The third key player on Clemson's offense is Gideon Davidson. With Jay Haynes tearing his ACL last year and Phil Maffa graduating, there's a void at the running back position. Gideon Davidson has the potential to fill that void. Right now, Adam Randall is the starter, but Gideon Davidson, the number 3 rated running back recruit in the class of 2025, has a chance to break through and earn the starting job. Clemson is going to need him to balance the great passing game, and if he breaks out as the top freshman in the nation, that could push Clemson's offense over the edge, and that's why I selected him as an impact player. Coach Swinney has said he has a chance to be truly special, and he allegedly has a 40-inch vertical, which is just insane out of a running back. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, my three impact players are defensive tackle Peter Woods, linebacker Sammy Brown, and safety Khalil Barnes. Peter Woods has been in talks of being a first-round pick because of his sheer size and athleticism. I think that his move from DN last year to D-tackle this year is going to allow him to fit great into the rush stop and also the pass rush. I expect that so long as he stays healthy the whole year, he will have a jump from his 3 sacks last year, and he will also play a big role in stopping the run, which was one of Clemson's weak spots last year, as we saw in the playoff game against Texas. He will have a huge impact on the success of Clemson's defense, which needs to step up if they want to contend for a national championship. The second impact player I selected is sophomore linebacker Sammy Brown. He was ranked as a 5-star coming out of high school and worked his way into the starting rotation as a freshman. I expect him to take a step up in both leadership and on-field performance, as last year he had 5 sacks and 80 total tackles, and as a sophomore I expect that to jump even higher. His impact in the run defense will be a tipping point for the Tigers this season. My third impact player is safety Khalil Barnes. Safety is the shallowest spot on the Tigers roster after losing Andrew Mukuba, Nate Wiggins, and RJ Mickens over the past 2 years. Barnes has big shoes to fill, as all 3 I just mentioned are now in the NFL, but I believe he can step up, and he has shown production in the past, as he has 7 interceptions for his career, and he also has 2 great corners in Avion Terrell and Ashton Hampton to help make his job easier. Having what is a weak position on paper turn into a potential strength if Khalil Barnes has a breakout season would catapult the Tigers' defense among the top in the country. Now, let's get into the predictions. Week 1 versus LSU. Huge primetime game against the other Tigers, and right now, as of recording, Clemson is favored by 4.5 points. This will be a huge test to start the season and will show a preview of how good the Tigers are really going to be during the 2025 season. For LSU, players to watch during the game are quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, running back Caden Durham, and wide receiver Aaron Anderson. Defensively, pay attention to LSU linebacker Harold Perkins, D-end Patrick Payton, and cornerback Ashton Stamps. LSU expects to be a pass-heavy offense, as last year their passing game was ranked 7th in the country compared to their rushing game, which was ranked 107th in the country. Defensively, they were about average, ranking 51 against the rush and 76 against the pass. However, LSU only returns 4 starters on offense and 2 starters on defense, so this team this year could be significantly different from last year's team. 4 out of 5 of LSU's offensive linemen are first-year starters, which I believe will cause problems trying to block Clemson's D-line, which is the best in the country, especially D-end TJ Parker. However, LSU has one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, and Clemson's cornerbacks and safeties will be challenged deep if Garrett Nussmeier is given enough time in the pocket to get the ball deep downfield. I believe Ashton Hampton and Avion Terrell, Clemson's cornerbacks, will match up against that threat well, but I don't think Clemson's safeties match up as well. I think that's going to be a weak spot, and I think that is going to be a deciding factor of the game, how well the safeties match up against the wide receivers. I expect LSU to take many deep shots throughout the game, but I also expect them to struggle running the ball and struggle in the short pass game, considering Clemson has strong linebackers across the interior and strong cornerbacks. Defensively, I don't expect LSU to be able to get to Cade Klubnik rushing just 4, because Clemson has one of the top 10 offensive lines in the nation, and LSU's D-line just is not on that level. However, LSU has one of the best linebacker rooms in the nation, so I believe they will blitz often and their blitzes will be effective. However, these blitzes will leave Clemson's wide receivers with more room to work across the middle of the field, so I believe Clemson will take advantage of that with wide receiver screens and slant routes across the middle in the short passing game, contrary to what LSU is going to do. I predict the final score will be Clemson 45, LSU 31. This would be a huge win in terms of national recognition, especially because Clemson went 0-3 against the SEC last year. Week 2 against Troy. I'm not going to waste too much of your time on this one. It's going to be a blowout. Troy went 4-8 last season and is projected to finish 10th in the Sun Belt this season. They return 8 starters and should have a solid quarterback in Will Crowder, but they just simply don't match up against the Tigers. I predict Clemson runs away with it early, winning 65-24. Clemson last season put in the 3rd and even 4th stringers on defense in many blowouts, which is why I have Troy scoring so many points. Week 3 on the road against a good Georgia Tech team. At the time of recording, Clemson is 9.5-point favorites, but I can see Georgia Tech putting up a good fight at least at some point during the game. After taking Georgia to 8 overtimes last year, 9 starters are returning for Georgia Tech, including quarterback Haynes King. King reminds me of Tim Tebow, and no, I'm not comparing them. I'm not saying he's on the same level skill-wise. I'm saying their play styles are similar. They're both gritty, they both run the ball, and they both struggle sometimes throwing the ball deep downfield. I think Clemson's defense matches up extremely well against that, with a great D-line and also fast linebackers to help contain King. Tech has a good running back in Jamal Haynes and a solid group of wide receivers as well. Georgia Tech brings back run-stuffing linebacker Kyle Eford, and I think their defense overall will be solid. I think Clemson will win 38-28 in a closer game than many people expect, to move to 3-0 on the season. Week 4, Clemson hosts Syracuse. After going 10-3 in his first season with the team, Fran Brown brought back only 4 returning starters. He found a quarterback in Kyle McCord last year, and he hopes for the same this year with Steve Angeli, a transfer from Notre Dame. This looks like it's going to be a transition season for Syracuse as they prepare for the future. And they also have one of the toughest schedules in the entire ACC, playing Tennessee, Clemson, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, and also Notre Dame. I don't expect a great season out of Syracuse, and anything more than 7 wins would be a great year for them, and I see Clemson bullying them here in Week 4. Syracuse simply doesn't have an offensive line to contain Clemson's pass rushers, and their defense was ranked 78th in the nation last year and did not get any better. I predict Clemson will win 55-17, moving to 4-0 on the season. Week 5 is a bye week for the Tigers, and in Week 6, they travel on the road to play the North Carolina Tar Heels and Bill Belichick. Nobody knows exactly what to expect out of North Carolina this year, but I do know that you can never count Bill Belichick out. North Carolina is expected to have a solid to good offense with quarterback Gio Lopez, 3 solid receivers, and 3 returning starters on the offensive line. However, the defense flat out sucks. As many of you probably saw, they gave up 70 points last year to James Madison, and the defense did not get better. I know some of you are saying Bill Belichick's a defensive coach. Maybe he'll fix that, but I say that college is more about the personnel than the coach, and there's nothing Bill Belichick can do with the talent he has on the defensive side of the ball to fix it enough that they will even be decent. I predict that the final score will be Clemson 59, UNC 28, moving Clemson to 5-0 on the season. Week 7 on the road against Boston College. This is Bill O'Brien's second season with the team, and he hopes to build on a good first year, including a memorable win against Florida State in Week 1. The brand new backfield of Dylan Lonergan and running back Turbo Richard looks promising from practice, and returning starters Lewis Bond and Reed Harris, both wide receivers, should both have great seasons this year. However, defensively, up front, they simply do not have enough good players to be able to compete against Clemson. They lost 3 defensive linemen to the NFL draft last year and did not do enough to replace them. This will give Cade Klubnik plenty of time to sit back in the pocket and pick apart the defense, and it will also give Adam Randall and Gideon Davidson plenty of rushing lanes to cut through that defense. Boston College will take a significant step back from their number 22 ranked rushing defense last year, and unless the offense plays perfectly, I don't see them keeping up with the Tigers. My prediction is Clemson 42, Boston College 17. Clemson moves to 6-0 on the season. Week 8, Clemson hosts SMU in a rematch of last season's ACC championship game, and according to preseason rankings, this is a top 20 matchup and a huge test for the Tigers just past the midway point of the season. Offensively, SMU returns star quarterback Kevin Jennings, wide receiver Jordan Hudson, and a great tight end in RJ Maryland. They also return 3 starting offensive linemen, but they lost a great running back in L.J. Johnson Jr. to California in an unexpected transfer in late spring. That leaves a freshman running back, Derek McFall, to step in as the starting back for the SMU Ponies. I expect an explosive offense out of SMU this season, but the defense, not so much. The roster is largely held together by transfer portal players, and we all saw how that went for Florida State last year. This game is also the first real test for SMU, unless you want to count the Baylor game early in the season, which I'm not going to do personally. If the defense gels together as a unit, which would be remarkably quickly for a bunch of players who didn't know each other before this, that could cause some problems for Clemson. Either way, I expect a high-scoring game. I predict Clemson wins 38-34, moving to 7-0 on the season. Week 9, Clemson has a bye week. In Week 10, they host the Duke Blue Devils. Duke swapped out their starting quarterback Malik Murphy for Darian Mensah from the transfer quarterback. Darian Mensah played at Tulane last year. After going 9-4 last year, Duke returns 11 starters. However, their wide receiver room is extremely inexperienced, and I believe they will struggle to get separation against Clemson's cornerbacks. If Mensah is the great quarterback Duke expects him to be, the offense could start rolling and be very electric. Defensively, Duke returns 6 starters after leading the ACC in sacks, fumbles forced, and fumbles recovered. The D-line will challenge Clemson, and all-ACC cornerback Chandler Rivers returns after a 3-interception, 2 forced fumble season. I think Duke will be a great team this season, and I think they're being underrated in the media. However, I predict Clemson will win 34-24 in a tight game and move to 8-0 on the season. Week 11, Clemson hosts the Florida State Seminoles as 16.5-point favorites. Florida State is coming off of a joke of a 2-10 season, and Mike Norvell's job is on the line this year. Before Florida State plays Clemson, they play both Alabama and Miami, and I believe that those 2 games will show exactly how the Clemson game is going to go. If Florida State manages to compete against those 2, they will likely compete against Clemson as well. However, if they crumble like I expect them to, then this is going to be a blowout. Florida State returns 0 starters on offense and 3 starters on defense, and they got a new quarterback, Tommy Castellanos, a transfer from Boston College. But from watching him for the past 2 years, I don't think he's that good. He's a rushing quarterback, which Clemson's defense will feast on, and he also throws ill-advised passes, which Clemson's quarterbacks will take to their advantage, and I predict multiple interceptions this game. Florida State does have a great wide receiver duo of Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White, but beyond that, they have little to no depth at the wide receiver position. Last season, they were ranked 132nd in offense and 86th in defense, and while I do expect them to improve on both sides of the ball, there are still deep issues in Tallahassee that I don't think can be fixed in one season. Defensively, there are stars like Darrell Jackson and DN James Williams, but there were stars last year too, and the defense still underperformed. I think Clemson will win 42-14, moving to 9-0 on the season. Week 12, Clemson travels to Louisville to take on the team that shocked them 33-21 at home last season. Louisville brings in transfer quarterback Miller Moss from USC, retains star running back Isaac Brown, and also brings back wide receiver Chris Bell, who's projected to have a great season. However, the offensive line is very shallow. This is likely going to be a problem for quarterback Miller Moss because last year he struggled under pressure and would make very ill-advised throws, just tossing the ball up, and I think the defense is going to feast on that all day. Louisville is not projected to have a great defense. They're going to have to outscore their opponents instead of stopping their opponent from scoring. Having to play with that style while also having a weak offensive line does not give me confidence in this Louisville team. Though last year's Louisville team was very good and did beat Clemson, this year's team is different enough that I think it will be the absolute opposite, and I think it will be a beatdown from the Clemson Tigers. Clemson players will remember what happened last year and will use that as fuel to dominate from the kickoff until the final whistle. I predict Clemson wins 52-21 in a statement 10th victory of the season. Week 13, Clemson hosts Furman, and this is another game that I'm just not going to go in depth on. Furman is FCS, they just simply aren't on the level of Clemson. I predict Clemson will win 65-7, and this is a great game to get the backups like Chris Vizina, Trent Pierman, and also Chris Denson, the freshman, into the game for some experience. Week 14, Palmetto Bowl, on the road, and I know for a fact Clemson's defense is not looking forward to seeing Lenore Sellers again. The defense struggled mightily to bring down Sellers once he broke into open field last season, and he just brings another year of experience this year. South Carolina brings back star wide receiver Nick Harbor and one of the nation's best DNs in Dylan Stewart, and in my opinion, this will be the toughest game for Clemson. South Carolina will be battle-tested after games against LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. On offense, they will be electric, and Lenore Sellers has a chance to be a truly special player, something like a Lamar Jackson in the future if he keeps up his trajectory. Some people are already calling him the top quarterback in the SEC, which is crazy after just his freshman season. The offensive line is young, but it's also very solid. At running back, Razul Faison is ready for a big year behind that line. One potential problem for South Carolina is the health of Lenore Sellers. Since he is a scrambling quarterback, he takes more hits than the average guy, and they do not have any even decent backup. If he goes down, their season goes down with it. Defensively, they did lose 3 linemen to the NFL, but they retained Dylan Stewart, who should emerge as a top 2 defensive end in the whole country. Transfers plug the holes in the lineup, and the secondary will be strong as well. This is the team that matches up best against Clemson, and I believe that the result could come down to something as small as special teams, as South Carolina brings in a new long snapper, holder, and kicker, who are all very inexperienced. I predict a tight 37-34 win for Clemson, which will go down as an all-time classic game. To sum everything up, I believe this Clemson team is truly special, and this is the best roster they've had in years. Thank you for watching.